Willard, so good to see you. Welcome to our show.
It's great to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're going to talk about change. We're going to talk about inspiration. Let's start with your own personal journey. Tell us a bit about your story and how it got you to where you are today.
Absolutely. I lost my leg when I was 8 years old. I had bone cancer. And that put me on two very divergent paths. One, it made me this mega overachiever. The other, it's made me angry, ashamed, all these other things. So I had a lot of accomplishments in high school. I was the first licensed amputee motorcyclist in Pennsylvania, lettered in high school football, lettered in high school wrestling, started my first business by the time I was 19. But it also had the downside. I started drinking and using drugs at the age of 13. 20 years old, I was facing 5 years in jail. And that story I can get into much more detail, but I know we got some time limits here. So 24 years old, I ended up hitting my ultimate bottom where I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially destroyed, did it all to myself. And that's where the transformation began, where I ended up turning everything around.
Wow. And that brings us to where we are now, the anatomy of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
The anatomy of transformation is actually what I, looking back, realized it was a system that I was using without even really being aware of it that allowed me to turn all those things around, and that I also was unconsciously using with my clients for the past 18 years because I do business consulting and coaching in those areas. So about 2 years ago, one of my mastermind partners was asking me, you've overcome all these things, what would you attribute it to? And that's really where, looking back, I recognized, oh my God, there's actually a system that I've been following and that I've been using with other people that will help get them from where they are to where they want to be.
Can you take us through some of that and explain it a bit?
Sure. There are 7 phases to the anatomy of transformation. Phase 1 I call ignorance. It's not a step, it's that space where we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. Like as an addict, you may be causing tremendous turmoil in your own life and others, and no matter how much somebody else tells you that you're acting insane, you can't see it because you're so caught up in the addiction. Or the other side of things, I'm sure there was a point in your life where you were unaware of the opportunity to become a host. There was something that you were doing previous to your work as a host. You were, quote unquote, ignorant of the broadcasting field. Phase 2 is where you became aware and you go, you know what, I can see myself doing that. I want to do that. Phase 2, though, can be an endless loop for people. They become aware of something, but they don't move forward. They use it as an excuse. They use it as a story to stay where they are. I did that for a while myself with the alcohol addiction, where it was my story, and I would say, well, what do you expect? I'm an alcoholic. And that would justify, in my mind, the actions I was taking. Phase 3 is taking responsibility, where you finally say, you know what, the reason I'm where I am, whether it's painful or whether I'm a hero, I'm here because of actions and decisions that I made and took. That's how I got here. And if I can own that and have responsibility on that, then I can choose where I want to go with my future and take responsibility for getting there. Phase 4 is what I call immersion. That's where you don't try to pick up the coffee cup, you do it. You either do it or you don't. You commit to making that outcome happen.
The great philosopher Yoda once said something
Absolutely
very similar to that, yes.
Do or do not, there is no try.
Exactly right.
Yoda had it down.
Yeah.
Phase 5 is what I call interdependence, because we never accomplish something on our own. We really do it by following the paths of others who've succeeded. Finding out what their choices were and what their actions were and their beliefs about things were. Phase 6 is when you've used interdependence enough, learning from other people to where you now own it. It's who you are. And then phase 7 is influence. And that doesn't mean you have to become a teacher or you have to go out on the speaking circuit. You automatically begin to influence people because of who you've grown to be. And that, to me, is the anatomy of transformation, going from ignorance to influence.
And it is appropriate and pertinent in all walks of life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
No matter business, personal, familial, anything like that.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, and I think that the most intimidating part, because it all sounds great, but it sounds like a lot, right? There are 7 big things to do.
Right.
So what advice would you have for somebody to just take that first step, to just get started on the path?
The biggest thing that prevents people from moving between any of the phases is fear or limiting belief systems. Belief systems that I can't because I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have the education, I don't have the finances. No matter where you are in that journey, if you just recognize there's only those 2 things that are preventing you from moving between phases, you are light years ahead of anybody else, because you can change your belief systems. You do it every day. You change your belief of what's possible, and you can always overcome fears if you're committed to it.
You know, we mentioned a movie line earlier. I'll give you one more as we say goodbye. Great line from Shawshank Redemption: "Get busy living or get busy dying." Right?
Absolutely.
Now's the time. Today, do it now.
Yeah.
If people want to ask you questions or reach out to you, how can they do it?
You can go to my website, which is willardbarth.com.
Yeah.
And that has all the contact information there.
And I can tell you personally that I've had the pleasure of